Hi, this is Robert Brown with the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative, and we welcome you back to our Digitalacha podcast. Digitalacha was developed by KVEC to inspire creativity and enable educators to network in real time and share professional learning experiences that ensure equity, access, and opportunity for all in our remote rural areas, regardless of their zip code. All learners, children and adults alike, have individual needs and must be provided equitable opportunities for learning that enable them to succeed both academically and socially. So we invite you to see all the great things of Digitalacha by visiting theholler.org. That's THEHOLLER.org. And speaking of our podcast in Digitalacha, I have two great guests today that's going to demonstrate part of that Digitalacha world. And that's Dion Bates. She's our implementation and improvement lead. And Chastity Kraft, who's our achievement gap specialist and literacy lead. Did I get those correct? That was a lot for me to say at one time. So I appreciate y'all being here. And I'm just going to have to say that there's so much wonderful work going on with our special ed group under the leadership of Dion and Chastity and the work that they've seen. And part of today's podcast is going to be a podcast to talk about their podcasts. So I'm excited to hear about that. When I had seen what some of the work they're doing, I said, guys, you've got to come on and have this conversation. So I want to welcome you both. And before we get started talking about your great work, if you wouldn't mind, introduce yourselves again. Tell us what you do. What are some of the things that you're working on at KVEC currently? Dion, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Robert. First, I'd like to say thank you for having us on board with your podcast, and we're happy to be here to talk about the work that's happening in special education. So my name's Dion Bates, and I am the Implementation and Improvement Lead here at KVEC. And so part of the work that I do is how to help support both our directors of special education, our building administrators, our teachers, and our related service providers to improve outcomes for students with disabilities. That's primarily the driving force, is that we want to provide the best possible supports we can for our special education staff, and in turn support our students.
All right, so you're getting the individual learning needs for the adults, just like we said in our introduction. So that is so important. So Chastity, what is it that you're working on?
Well, I am the Achievement Gap Specialist in the area of literacy. So I'm one of, we have a behavior, math, and due process consultants and low incidence consultants. So I'm just the literacy one to go along with the other ones. We are just doing, like Dion had said earlier, so we do the work to help the support of the teachers in our region. We're working on some cadres and the podcast like we're going to be talking about earlier, and we have some initiatives to support our teacher leaders in our region, providing I've been doing some individual coaching through virtually, of course. We've got a lot of new teachers in our region, and to be overwhelmed in not only just the virtual platform that they're having to do, but just the teaching in general. So we're just providing some coaching for them as well.
And this is a very stressful time. And as we're all trying to catch up for this virtual world, and I'll have to say that a lot of the work that you've done currently, even pre-COVID, in providing video recordings of training and creating micro-credentials and having virtual meetings with different cadres, was a great springboard. So when COVID hit, we had to ramp it up quite a bit, a little faster than expected, but you were already on a good trajectory of providing those learning resources. And so that's part of the reason you're here. So I appreciate what you all have said. So what I want to do first, before we start talking about your podcast, is I would like for you guys to share and talk with us about some of those resources that if they go to theholler.org and your special ed components, what are some of the things they're going to find and they're going to see?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that kind of evolved as our work has moved forward to support special education. But we now have a site on the Holler website, theholler.org, that features the special education work that's going on right now in our region. So I'm going to share my screen with you and talk just a little bit about that work.
Yeah. And so for those of you who are listening in, we will give you that website as she pulls this up, and she'll read that out for you. So if you have a pencil and paper handy, you can go there, or you can go to theholler.org. And you can scroll down and find the special ed site, and you can find that as well. So Dion, if you'll go ahead and tell us what that site is.
Yes. Okay. So this one is our Google site.com at theholler.org. and it's KVEC-special ed. So you'll be able to access that and link that. Some of the things we have on here, the first thing I want to talk about is one of the roles that we have is that we provide support to our directors of special education. So if you'll see on this left side of the screen, this is the 15 county service area that we provide supports for our directors. And as part of that work, we have both due process and compliance components of our work, as well as academic and behavioral supports. So in order to meet that technology need and that professional learning through this virtual lens, we've created this site, and the tabs here that you see take you direct links to professional development, professional learning opportunities for content specific for those if you work with students who have hearing or vision losses, things that we do around co-teaching. But so our directors, then we support those directors through a monthly Director of Special Education Support Network. And that evolved many years ago as that direct link from the Department of Education to the district directors. And we serve as a liaison and relay information and support that work. And in the last few years, we have also integrated an advisory council through our directors of special education. And so part of the work that's driving what we're doing at KVEC is data that we collected directly from those directors of special education, indicating what their needs are and what supports they might need for their teachers.
And that needs-based professional development is so important, because when I look at your screen, I see 18 buttons of resources that are all needs-based. As you said, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think that's very important, that this is needs-based, based on the educators and the data that they're collecting from the schools. So continue. I just wanted to highlight that point.
So one of the really great things about the work is that we had administered a survey to the directors to just prioritize what those needs were. We had 143 director responses, including directors of special education, building administrators, teachers, and related service providers. And so that's driving the work that we're doing now. So that was a big piece of what we do. And then again, like Chastity talked about just a minute ago, not only do we provide that professional learning, but we provide that ongoing support. And as a result of that, we've created some networks that the need just arose because of the nature of the work. So we developed a new and emerging teacher cadre, and that's specific for special education teachers. And that one really revolves around what the due process and the compliance pieces are. And that one is a monthly meeting that we meet the second Wednesday of every month. And we have new special education teachers that come and participate. And it's a timely topic, relevant to their work, and it follows kind of the natural flow of what that school year might look like. So we tried to have it as ready for them just in the right time. Right. So that's what we tried to think through that, and so we provide those supports along that continuum as we think through what does a special educator need to know? What's the first thing they need to know? What's the next thing they need to know? And again, we follow that progression, but we archive those. And I'm just going to click on this tab here under New and Emerging Teacher Cadre, and we archive each of those meetings, and we have those along with all of the resources. We connect them back to the Department of Education or the leading national sites or resources that we know are best practices in special education. So not only do they have an opportunity to listen and participate in that network, they can go and look at those in their time, so that it becomes when they need that information and when they need to have access. So it's 24-hour access to those resources and tools.
And that's very important. Now, just a quick question to follow up, and I'm thinking of myself at the time when I was a new principal. If I'm a new principal and I had new special ed teachers at the same time, are principals allowed to go on with their teachers along with us?
Absolutely. Okay. This is open for, so the whole idea is we have directors of special education that join us. We have principals that join on. We have special education teachers. So, and you know, if you're a new principal and you wanted to just learn those pieces, you are absolutely invited to participate. And we also do some specific things to support principals and building administrators, district administrators as well. But these are archived. So if you wanted to go back a little later and have a PLC with your special education teachers, then you have the tools and resources that you need to have that small group or that PLC with those teachers.
I would have loved to have had this. This is just amazing.
Yes. And so again, that's become that necessity. You know, we realize what they need, and so we've tried to respond to that need and create the tools that we have in front of us. Another thing I want to just real briefly talk about is that we have a professional action network of teacher leaders who are special educators. And so those special educators identify a problem of practice, and then they, based on what's happening in their school districts or what their teachers need, their colleagues and their feedback from that, and created projects in the past. And so they have a project that has more information, a deeper dive into things like eligibility or developing an IEP, or how we progress monitor things that we're required to monitor. And so this year, those teacher leaders are partnering with our micro-credential developers, and we are developing 6 additional micro-credentials around the area of special education. And Robert, you can probably speak more about this with around the micro-credentials, but last year, as part of an initiative we had with the Cooperative here at KVEC, where we developed some micro-credentials that had that focus on special education, but were applicable to general ed teachers who teach those students that have disabilities. And I'll just click on that link real quickly. So these are the micro-credentials that we have that are available for our service area, and even beyond that, around those areas, and working with exceptional children.
So when we talk about micro-credentials, we're talking about digital forms of learning that are competency-based, that are just-in-time learning, that educators have an opportunity to go on to show their competency based on evidence of their impact in the classrooms. So that's what when we refer to micro-credentials, that's what we're talking about here. And I was part of that work with Dion and a lot of the teachers in the region, and his outstanding work. And currently those are on their site, plus the Digital Promise site who worked with us on this. So they just awesome work.
We're really excited to offer the development of 6 new additional ones that'll be added.
All right. Do you have the titles of those 6 new ones yet, or are you still working on those?
I have those in a draft form, but they're going to be around, we're having some more that are around co-teaching. We have some that are around more of a virtual or a hybrid instruction, and how we deliver that for our students with disabilities. We're going to have some that talk about how do we deliver accommodations and modifications for students through a virtual lens or a hybrid lens, so that if we're very fluid, whether we're in a virtual setting or in a face-to-face setting. And we have some around behavior that we're going to focus on. And again, these are kind of in the draft form right now, but we'll really kind of narrow those topics down. But we're also going to talk about eligibility and how you determine an eligibility, and the process that you use in that, if you're in that virtual versus that face-to-face setting. And then we have an additional progress monitoring that will become part of a stack of progress monitoring micro-credentials.
And thinking about those micro-credentials, just a follow-up question. If I'm a regular ed teacher and I have, is this appropriate for me to take along with my special ed teacher as a team to work on these? Or do I have to do it just as a special ed teacher?
No, it would be very appropriate on twofold, really, Robert. If you are a collaborating teacher, or you work together with a co-teacher, so if you're the regular ed teacher and you have a collaborating co-teacher, it would be great if you could look at some of those models about that delivery of specially designed instruction. So whether you're a special educator or a general education teacher, your learning is going to be enhanced. It's about best practices. It's about meeting the needs of diverse learners. So I think it supports both regular ed and special ed. And sometimes it even gives regular ed teachers some insight about what are the best practices or those high leverage practices to address special education. But then it has that added benefit of supporting those gap kids, those kids that are not in the special education program, but they need intensive interventions, or they need much more targeted levels of support. So that's an absolute benefit, for them to work collaboratively, or there's some that are appropriate for them to learn about special education and understand about disability.
So you're
So
developing a whole system of professional learning in a school in a district where
yes.
regardless of if you're a leader, a school leader, a teacher leader, a special ed teacher, a district leader, you can all work on these together for the betterment of their students.
So the next thing I'd like to talk about that evolved from this work and this feedback is a podcast. And so we framed that with the title of the Educator's Playbook. And so I'm going to take you to that link, and it is on this Google site with our KVEC Special Education Department. And let's take a look at the podcast. And I want to let you guys take a look at what that work looks like. And I'm going to make this a larger screen so that we can look at this. But I'm going to let you talk specifically as Chastity has started this work. She was the first one to conduct one of the podcasts, and we looked at literacy. So I'm going to let her talk a little bit about it. But because we knew that we wanted to invite practitioners and have people that part of this network that to share strategies and what was working really well and best practices. This is kind of how it's evolved. So on my screen, this is what that podcast looks like. And so Chastity, if you don't care, could you just talk a little bit about what the reasons are that a teacher or a principal or anyone in special education or even general education would like to join our podcast?
Well, the work that was the thinking behind this was we wanted to provide a network for teachers across the region to be able to share ideas and hear what is really working from teachers in the classroom. Provide an opportunity for teachers to talk to each other across the whole region. So we come up with this, the podcast idea to and invite the teachers as guests, and our goal is to highlight from all. We want to cover all of our districts in the region. This particular episode, these two teachers were from Letcher County. They shared with us. They come on and shared strategies that this one was about progress monitoring, but they also showed us how they were doing that virtually, some strategies they were doing in the area of literacy, how they were doing that virtually, and then how they were progress monitoring and how they were collecting that data. Also, we have created a classroom, a Google Classroom that accompanies our podcast series. We each have one. There's a literacy one, a math, and a behavior, and a low incidence. So when these ladies talk to us about the strategies that has worked for them and what resources they have used, they have also added those resources in that Google Classroom that anyone can join. We actually have the class code on that podcast button that Dion showed on our website. So under the literacy, beside each viewing of the podcast, you have the class code beside of that. If they're watching live, they can add it then, but or they could email any of us. My email is chastity.craft@theholler.org. They can email me and I could add them, or they can use the class code. So you have access to those resources. You also get real talk from real teachers of what everybody is going through such a time right now. So it provides an opportunity for teachers to express their ideas or maybe even some frustrations, depending on where the conversation goes. They can express their frustration, but then you can also have a teacher that says, yes, I experienced this as well, and this is what I did to address that, and now it's better. So that's what we wanted to do, to be able to have that for those teachers. Like Dion had said earlier, we kind of look at for special education teachers, but when this one, that's the literacy one that I did on progress monitoring, and in October, when we were talking about it beforehand, a teacher had chimed in and she said, "Oh, is this only for special education teachers?" And she was actually a primary teacher a general education primary teacher had joined. And so of course I was like, oh no, by all means, that you are more than welcome. It's for anybody. But it tickled me to death, because I was like, oh wow, a general education teacher actually came on. So I was excited about that. But
yeah, that is also, and some of the things you just mentioned, and I came back to our introduction of just what Digitalacha is, and your special ed department is doing such a good job with this, because you talk about digital learning, talk about isolation. This helps take care of that, because you have networking, you have real time, you have archives, you have resources, you have 24/7 access, regardless of where you are across the hills and what holler you live in. You have it. So this is exciting to hear, and so that's why and I knew I wanted you on this podcast because of this reason. And I didn't mean to cut you off, Jesse, so if you want to continue, but this is a great shot. We have teachers in the background talking about their work with us, as you're in the foreground speaking about the Exceptional Educators Playbook here as well. So just continue. I just wanted to stop and highlight what you just said.
One other thing I want to add, to encourage, because we really want to encourage the engagement piece. We want to hear from teachers in the region. One thing that we do prior to recording, which we do we do it live, and then we have people there, and then we record it for later. But before then, we send out a Google form, just some questions to get feedback from those teachers, so that we will have for our talking points. Because, for example, for the progress monitoring piece, I had sent out some questions. So some of the questions we had gotten back were, I need help with some tools that I can implement virtually. I can implement efficiently and effectively. So I made sure that was our talking points, and we answered those questions on the podcast. So I want to encourage, when we get those, when we send those out, those feedback forms, to please send those in, because that's what we use to talk about. Because we want to answer the real questions that teachers have.
And that's important, because if the teachers aren't engaged with knowledge that they need, they're not going to be engaged while they're listening or watching. So they've got to have their questions answered, especially, and I hate to keep bringing this up now, everyone is stressed to the max. And so to get those questions answered and have those resources and help them get through this. Now, and I'll have to tell you, even without COVID, this work is good work, and it's going to continue regardless of what's thrown at us, because there's some awesome things here. So when we look at your Exceptional Educators Playbook, and you did a great job talking about the purpose and some of the things there. What are some of those other reasons folks would want to be part of your podcast? What are they going to get? What are they going to see?
Robert, I'd like to just say a little bit about that. A couple things that comes to mind. We are, through this network, it's a community of learners that so they become a community, and they have someone they can share ideas and tools and resources with and get feedback. Again, like you were talking about, some people may only be the special education teacher in a small school. They may only have one other special education teacher, or maybe not another colleague that they can talk to. So this is an opportunity to expand that professional learning community, and they become that community of learners. And that was our intention, was to create that network. The second thing is we have learned that it gives special education teachers a voice, and they feel very valued, and they can contribute so much to the learning process, and they have a lot to bring to the table. And so it's kind of a value added, or it's a tool that we can that teachers can rise up. And as we've worked through this virtual learning and how we've transitioned from, a face-to-face to a blended and virtual learning platform, we have really seen some rock stars rise in the field of special education. We have teachers that are going above and beyond and are delivering specially designed instruction. They're providing students with accommodations and modifications. They're delivering solid instruction. And so, we don't have those barriers, like when we have that virtual opportunity, we don't have some of those same barriers. Like we can engage kids. So we've embraced that
Yeah.
opportunity
And
in
then with
special education.
and with your rock stars, what I'm hearing as well is you're also developing a great pool of potential mentors for your other teachers in the region and growing that network even larger. Is that accurate?
It really is. It is. We have established, a teacher leader network, and I've seen for the last 3 years the growth of those teachers. Some of those teachers are their district teacher leaders now. We have
Okay.
one that's a mentor. We have several that are mentors, but and so they are exemplar models that their districts use. A lot of the times we train them in, best practices and tools and resources, but they take that back to their district, and then
Mhm.
they train their district. So yeah, districts are utilizing the teacher leaders in many different ways. Mentors, just to facilitate learning, professional learning, just models, and just supporting those new teachers that come on board, because that's one of the things we're finding. We have a lot of new and emerging special educators in this region, and so we build the capacity of those teachers, and we have some that are relatively new. We have some that are experienced or that are veteran teachers, but bringing that together and bringing them together and elevating that work has been remarkable, the response that we're getting from teachers.
And so building that capacity, and when I hear some folks say they're building the capacity, I also hear sustainability. They're building within them a system that if we go away, the system will continue to go because I now have the skills I need. And I hear that in what you're saying as well. The other thought I have, gosh, we're talking a lot here. I'm so excited about this. And I'm thinking there's a lot of information here. And I know you all can't do all this at one time. So how do you schedule all this work to get to those details that you need? Is there a schedule of what happens every month? What's going to happen every week? How do you get to the content? How do you manage all that knowledge to get to the teachers?
Well, I can talk about the director's meeting, and then I'm going to let Chastity talk about
Okay.
how we do the podcast. How about
Okay.
that?
That sounds great.
So we have a monthly reoccurring director of special education meeting. So that one is a monthly scheduled meeting. And so that one occurs no matter, without disruption. That one is, occurs all the time. The same with the new and emerging teacher cadre. That's one time a month. So that's the second Wednesday of the month. After school, so it's from 3:30 to 4:30. The micro-credential and the professional action network, those are things that we have to be real strategic as well, because we have to be real respectful of time. But those, we have those accompanying our events or things that, so we have some things in the fall, then we offer some things in the winter, and then we have some things in the spring. So it's kind of on that same trajectory. We kind of have a timeline that we use to frame that support and how we roll those things out so that it becomes manageable. But, our department here at KVEC in the special education department, we're moving and shaking to keep the work going. And I'm going to let Chastity talk just a little bit about the podcast and how we worked on the scheduling for that.
Okay.
Use the same framework that Dion had talked about, just going ahead and scheduling it, when it's going to happen. So we wanted to do, we decided on a monthly topic for each content. I mean, it's the same topic for each content area. Again, it was back to the time, what teachers would need, what they need to know. So we sat down and came up with a monthly topic, and then we broke that down in by category, by content, because some teachers teach more than one, but then some teachers don't. So then they would have that option if they wanted to join the literacy and the math, or just one or the other. So the literacy is the first Monday of each month. The math is the second Monday. The behavior is the third Monday, and then low incidence is the fourth Monday of each month. We made it consistent to always be on a Monday so that would make it easy. So we did that from 3:30 to 4. And then as far as to plan for it, I'm going to be honest, doing all these projects, that is one of the biggest things, biggest adjustments for me, coming out of the classroom recently, you had your schedule for you and it was very structured, and now it's big picture. You got to think big picture. So you have to make those the deadlines on the big ending piece, and then you just kind of work in your details and kind of get your flow going. So you really have about 2 or 3 projects going at the same time. So, but then, we work on, like right now, my next one is November the 9th, and November has 5 Mondays, so it kind of threw us off a little bit. So with election day and all that, schools are out. So November 9th is going to be the first Monday for the literacy one. And that November is going to be, the topic is going to be academic and behavior strategies. So we're going to be focusing on instructional strategies. So I'm going to be talking about the literacy ones, of course, and then math will be talking about math specific. Okay. So I have sent out my Google form that I had mentioned earlier to get feedback on what specific areas of need the teachers would need. And I've also got my special guests lined up for next month. It's going to be Kristen Addington from Jenkins Independent Schools. She's going to come on and talk about what she teaches ELA at the high school level. So she's going to talk with us some strategies that works for her. And then, so once I get that guest, then we just get the content, and then, because you want to, of course, you want it to be quality content that you're giving these teachers, because you don't want to waste their time. You want to give them something that they can use immediately and take back to their classroom. So you want to just get to the point.
So I was going to say, we're getting ready to run out of time here. And before we do, if you wanted any of the listeners or those watching to take away the key thing that you mentioned today, what would that be? Chastity, go ahead. What would be the key item? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Well, the key thing for the teachers is our message to them is we want our teachers to know that we want to support them, really support them with things they could really use in their classroom immediately right now. So we encourage them to reach out to us and let us know. We have an idea, but unless we hear from them, we want to know specifically what they need, because we can provide that for them if we know what that is.
Dion, what do you have?
Well, I can think of so many things I want to take away from this, but the biggest thing I think that drives the work we do every single day is that we want to improve outcomes for our students with disabilities. We want to provide them with the best possible supports, tools, and resources. And through that means we support the special educators, our related service providers, our paraprofessionals, our administrators, our central office staff, and our directors of special education. So again, the biggest takeaway is that we want to have every tool and resource that we can possibly think that would benefit teachers to help our kids, because that's why we get up and come to work every day, is to make a difference in whatever way we can. And
improving opportunities for our students and improving their learning is the perfect ending to any podcast, because that's what we're all about. And I just want to thank Dion and Chastity for joining us today. I could go on and talk forever, because working with special ed students and special ed teachers is always near and dear to my heart. And the things that you guys are doing, I am just in awe at all the resources that you have out there for new teachers, existing teachers, administrators. And I go through there often and look through them. I've actually stolen some of your work and put it into the design lab that's also out there on the holler.org. So I've stolen, I'm going to admit it, but it's for the benefit of the kids, so it's okay. But anyway, thank you, Chastity. Thank you, Dion, for joining us today. And I hope you guys can join us next time for the Kentucky Valley Educational Cooperative and the Digital Edge podcast, and we'll talk to you later.